Hello, once again, everyone, and welcome to your weekly NOCD webinar on Ask Me Whatever You Want to Ask Me. I look forward to chatting with all of you tonight and hope that we will have some fun with this, as I like to do. And I've already put up some predictions. I predict someone's going to ask me, why does my OCD choose blank? I also predict, am I a bad person for having these thoughts, images, or urges? And number 3 prediction is, since this feels so real, does that mean that it is? And maybe a 4th one, do you think OCD or ERP could work for blank? Because you'll probably assume that it can't, that it could work for everything else, but not for that. So, Hadassah. Any advice on how to do exposure at home away from your therapist? I feel like ERP won't work for me, but that's apparently normal to think. Well, as I just predicted, there's that question. Wow, right off the bat. Nice. Yes, it's so easy to predict that something won't work for you, but just because we predict that that's the case does not actually mean that it is true. For example, if you all predict that your ceiling will collapse during this talk, does that mean that it actually will? Well, let's see. I'm going to make the prediction that by the time I'm done with this webinar, the lights will explode and the ceiling will collapse on top of me. So let's just see if that happens. Okay, because I can predict anything, and it doesn't mean that I need to worry about it or be concerned about it, or that any darn thing's going to happen about it either. So we'll check that out. How to perform ACT while one lives in fear all the time? Well, the nice things about ACT and exposure therapy, which is really what we utilize mostly at NOCD, is that our goal is to work on accepting that fear and that it is okay to have fear. There's nothing wrong with having fear. In fact, you were born with fear. Fear is an evolutionary thing, and it can be a difficult life without fear. If you want to get an idea what that's like, I'm going to type something here. And they interview a woman who is one of about maybe 300 people or so in the world that we know of who doesn't have fear. It's because they have this disorder, and the disorder basically turns the basal ganglia and the amygdala, not the basal, the amygdala, from being the piece of tissue that it is in the brain to a rock, a stone. Basically, it absorbs calcium, and because of that, it no longer transmits information. And without transmitting information, it can't transmit fear. So there are about 300 people who don't have a fight, flight, or freeze response that we know of in the world. Now, it's very hard to get a hold of these people because no one wants you to know who they are. Researchers will not release their names, where they live, anything of that nature, all because these people could be very easily taken advantage of because they have no fear. So I could kidnap one of them and they wouldn't be afraid of that, but I could say to them, if you don't rob that bank, I'm going to harm your children. And they might say, well, I don't want my children to be harmed, so okay, I'll go rob the bank. You know, and there's just no trepidation that they would have about something. They have to think about things significantly instead of reacting to things. So they may know something will be harmful, but they have to think that through, versus all of us who just kind of react with that fight, flight, or freeze response. So what we're talking about here is accepting that we have fear. Because if your goal is to have no fear, then you have a goal that's unattainable. And if you have a goal that's unattainable, it's not a good goal. So goals must be attainable. And this is where people fail very often, because they set goals that are so high that they can't achieve them. Then they become disappointed that they can't achieve their goals, that they just feel more and more sad or dejected or down or depressed or something like that. And, you know, when that happens, that it's just horrible and awful and nothing really feels like it's working. So set a goal to work on accepting that fear and to be okay with the fact that one has fear, and then work on managing that fear and being okay with living everyday life with having fear. And I think that over time, what you might see is that it is actually okay to have some fear, and you might be less afraid of having fear. And if you're less afraid of having fear, it might be easier to live your life if you're less afraid of having fear. What kind of medicine is best to treat? OCD, antipsychotic or antidepressant? Well, typically what happens is you start on an antidepressant. So the American Psychiatric Association suggests two treatments, exposure and response prevention, or exposure and response prevention plus medication. Antidepressants are the first line treatment that are added. After that would come atypical antipsychotics, or another drug, which is an older drug, a tricyclic called clomipramine, which is also an Anafranil, which has very good results with OCD, it seems, but is a dirtier drug because it's a tricyclic antidepressant, so it can have more side effects for some people. So, by the way, tonight is being brought to you by NOCD. Just so you know, if you're interested in reaching out to NOCD, if you're looking for a therapist, because we do teletherapy now across the U.S., we're in 19 states, although due to some of the emergencies going on, there is some allowances for us to work in a few other states as well, too, that we're working toward. So feel free to go to treatmyocd.com, and that's our website. And up in the little bar up on top of the chat there, you'll also see a link that you can go to as well, too. Sarah, OCD fears of dying from the coronavirus. What can I do? Well, you do what the CDC says. We talked a lot about this last week, so I'll do one or two corona questions tonight. But since we spent so much time on it last time, and since the answers are almost always the same, everybody get ready, because here comes your corona answers. Number one, follow the CDC guidelines. Do what they say, which is, we're isolating for a while. Okay. All right. Fine. And if you go out and you do go to the grocery store and you do stuff, when you come home, wash your hands for 20 seconds. Anything more than that is OCD. Okay. And if you have stuff in your home that's coming from the outside and you need to do some washing of things, you can wash them quickly. You don't have to do hours-long scrubs. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay? Wiping things down, good enough. Soap and water still works, everybody. And always remember, the soap and water that your great-grandparents used was bacon grease that was solidified, and probably they were in the fourth use of that water because it cost extra money to change the water if you went to a bathhouse, because not even everyone had plumbing. So you were probably bathing in water that 10 other people had already bathed in, and they would just add like 1 or 2 cups of hot water to warm it up a little bit, and you would reuse that soap. And so you'd be sitting in everybody else's stuff getting a bath. That's how it worked. So I look at it this way. If previous generations of humans survived the cesspools that they lived in, for some people, literally that open sewers that were there, if you want to get an idea of what some of that looked like, go to Angela's Ashes, a great novel from Ireland, and just see that people would just take their poop and pee buckets and they'd throw them out in the middle of the street in the alley, and that sometimes it would flood so much in the cities that they would live in the upstairs, and the downstairs would just be literally poop and pee and water from the sewers that would back up, because the sewers were really just ditches more than anything else. And if people survived all of that, then if we follow the CDC guidelines, I think that we can survive what's going on as well, too, to the best of our abilities. Okay. Brittany sees more articles on wash'em, I assume you mean washing there, Brittany, and disinfecting groceries and packages. So far, I have not seen the CDC recommend that. I'm trying to not get into OCD territory, but cautious if articles from major businesses like Amazon and doctors should be followed. Okay, I have not washed a thing from the grocery store that I have brought home. Not a can, not a bag. I don't even wash the countertops where I've put things down on those types of things. So I don't see that being a recommended thing yet. Maybe it will be. Who knows? But for right now. Oh, and there's also a bunch of ridiculous Snopes things going around too. Sorry, not ridiculous Snopes. Snopes is wonderful. There's a bunch of ridiculous things out there that Snopes is already kind of cutting down. So good for you, Snopes. If you get some of these emails like, hey, my best friend's mom's aunt's granddaughter's third cousin's neighbor is a doctor and said that gas stations are a major contributor to the COVID-19 virus, go on Snopes and look that up, and they will say, yeah, this is a hoax. Okay, so wash your hands 20 seconds like you're supposed to, and that's good enough. Mateo would like to know how to live with OCD without medication. Well, congratulations, Mateo. You can do that, and you can do that through utilizing exposure and response prevention. The form of therapy that we use at NOCD, by the way, NOCD available to all of you through the NOCD app, and there is a teletherapy section if anyone is looking for a therapist. Now, Mateo, exposure and response prevention involves two things. Exposing yourself to the things you are afraid of. That's the exposure part, which happens a lot. But the most important part is really the response prevention piece. And it is the response prevention part where we get people to stop doing their typical coping strategies, avoiding, seeking reassurance, distracting, using substances, and doing compulsions. So if you want to learn how to live with OCD without medication, you have to start getting to the point where you're going to decide to no longer avoid things you're afraid of. You're going to stop getting reassurance from everyone you know that you'll be fine or okay. You're going to fully engage in the things you're afraid of without distracting yourself by looking at cute little fuzzy cat videos on YouTube or something like that. You're not going to use any substances before you go do your exposures, and that even includes things like benzodiazepines, which are very overprescribed in our USA, shall we say. And unfortunately, many people utilize those to deal with their fears and then don't learn how to handle fear without taking them. And then you have to really work on decreasing the amount of compulsions that you do as well, too. Okay. Lucy, is it normal that in transgender OCD, you feel scared of looking at yourself in the mirror? Well, sure. I mean, that could happen. I mean, nothing kind of OCD is abnormal to me anymore, because I have done this for 20 years and no longer am surprised by anything at all anymore. OCD will pick its way to make you be afraid of something. So if your OCD has said to you that, what if you were to become transgendered, or what if you wanted to be transgendered and that's just not how you identify yourself? And by the way, for those of you who are transgendered out there, this is not about not liking you. This is just about a person. What if I'm not the identity that I've identified myself with? Okay. I mean, you could be gay and worry about what if I were to become straight, or you could be transgender and worried, what if I wasn't transgender? Then it could go the opposite. So if looking at the mirror is the thing that scares you, the exposure and response prevention piece is going to be having you work toward looking in the mirror. And I think that you would find that to be a very, very helpful thing. Okay. Evelyn says, can OCD display themselves as direct statements or commands? Well, of course. What if this were to happen? What if you were to do this? What if you wanted to do that? Those types of things. That's where we see it happen all the time. So, and it may also be you might have run that person over, or that bump might have been something else. So there's lots of statements that it makes all the time. Absolutely. Anush, how do you teach yourself not to believe intrusive thoughts? You test them out to see if they're ever true. I have an intrusive thought going right now that the ceiling is going to collapse and the lights are going to explode by the end of this webinar. As of yet, has not happened. Still could, though. We're testing it out, though. So that's the intrusive thought that I'm testing right now. Now, can I convince you, Anush, that your intrusive thoughts are not true? Nope. I can't. Believe me, I've tried with numerous patients and realized just how ridiculous that was. Even though I knew that it was ridiculous, there are still points where sometimes that wants to creep in and you're like, oh, I think I can get him. No, it doesn't. So it's not about convincing you that your thoughts aren't true. It's about getting you to recognize that just because you have those thoughts doesn't mean that you have to do a darn thing about them whatsoever. They're just thoughts. That's all that they are. Okay. That's the goal. That's what we're working toward. Accepting that I have a thought or an image or an urge, and that it doesn't have to mean anything about me, and I don't have to believe them to be true. And that's just the way it is. What percentage of people in the USA have severe OCD, and why is affordable treatment lacking? Thank you, Robert. Well, OCD is 1 in 40 people, making it about 8.5 million people in the United States. If you consider 10% are severe, then we have 850,000 people who are severe OCD. And why is affordable treatment lacking? That is a great question. It is unfortunate that that's the case. But one of the things that we've really tried to do at NOCD is to make sure that we do have affordable treatment. So we are working with insurance companies and will very soon be accepting insurance payments. And all people will have to do is pay their copay for NOCD treatment very soon in the states that we are live in. So that's very exciting. And currently we are accepting self-pay, but our rate is very low, I will say, compared to all the other therapists I know, because our goal is to get the treatment out there. Stephen Smith, who's our CEO, who suffered from OCD for years, doesn't want people to lack in treatment. So we want to make sure that we are available to people to help you out. So that is our goal. There are a few other places that offer some nice options. One is through Amita Health, where I worked. If you're a veteran or the spouse of a veteran or if a child of a veteran between the ages of 18 and 26, you can get your day treatment fee waived for residential treatment for OCD at the Foglia Family Foundation Residential Treatment Center. So that's something else to consider as well, too, if that might fit you. Lisa, any advice on what I can do since I work out in public in retail and people are freaking out at work? Any advice about what I can do about my germs and contamination OCD while at work, since what used to be irrational thinking is now rational thinking right now, since I can actually get sick from others' germs? Well, here's the thing, Lisa. You could have always gotten sick from others' germs. So there's no change in that. I would not say that your irrational thinking is now rational. Your irrational thinking can remain irrational, although I've never really been fans of rational and irrational myself in terms of using those terms. But you were not immune to the flu or any other germs that were going on to anybody else. So just because there's a new one out there doesn't mean now that you're now rational about thinking that way. Okay. Now, there's some interesting things about this virus, right? That it spreads pretty quickly, it appears. So what does that mean? It means for all of us, caution, right? And we do the basic cautions that we do. So if you're in retail, I know a lot of retailers who are doing some very basic things right now. Number one, they wash down the credit card machine between transactions. Number two, they make sure that in lines, people stand far apart from each other so that there's not a lot of bunching up. Number three, many states have asked people who are actively showing signs or symptoms of not feeling well to stay home and self-quarantine. Number four, you can decide if you want to, while you're interacting with people, if you have to be handing people money or touching things like that more closely, if your company says gloves are okay to wear, then I've seen that at other places. I don't bemoan anybody doing something of that nature whatsoever. I saw a picture today of there's flight attendants wearing masks while they're working on the flights. Okay. I mean, if we're going to have to be in kind of violations, shall we say, of some of the CDC guidelines where we're going to have to be closer to each other, then I'm not saying that you can't utilize certain types of protections for yourself. But recognize this as well, too, that if you're healthy and you're wearing a mask, that isn't going to be as good for you as the person who's ill who's wearing a mask, protecting the other people around them who are healthy. So that's kind of what we know about how the masks are working currently. Okay. So, Lisa, the other thing to do is really sit down and talk to your therapist if you have one, because this could be a pretty significant conversation to have about how do you manage your contamination OCD. And for those of you who do have contamination OCD, I think that this is just a good point to say, we're hearing you, right? And boy, do I feel some of the pain that you have, because I have been working with many of you and can just hear kind of the fear in your voice and see it over the screen as I'm working through the teletherapy with people. And it's hard at times, even as a therapist, to not want to give tons of reassurance to people, to say to them that they're going to be fine and everything will be okay. Believe me, those things always run through my head. I know they're not good for people and I don't give them to people, but they run through my head, and they've still been running through my head even in this type of situation. But what I don't want to tell people is that everything's going to be fine or okay, because even before COVID-19, I never knew if somebody was going to be fine or okay. I never had that 100% assurance, and I don't have it now. Okay? So I appreciate all of you who are working in retail, who are out there, who are doing interactions with the public, even if they are at closer quarters than times the CDC suggests. I appreciate the jobs that allow for people to make some personal decisions on the things that they want to do in order to feel safe in those types of situations. I appreciate all the teletherapy people out there who are making lots of effort to be available to people with OCD to help them out. One thing that I'll tell you what, I'm sure as heck happy that 2 months ago I decided to go work for NOCD, a teletherapy company, and be able to continue to do work and help people through all of this, because that would be much more difficult if I was working at a brick and mortar hospital like I was before, who are seeing tons of different types of changes and all sorts of rules and regulations and stuff that are coming up. And Lisa, I want you to know that you're not alone, right? You're not suffering in silence. And I would think that utilizing the NOCD app and really being able to utilize your peers on the NOCD app would also be a nice thing to do, because it's a great community to be able to talk to others about how they're dealing with this as well. Maybe they've got some great advice too. Maybe they have some wonderful suggestions. Maybe their work has come up with a very good solution about how to handle all of this as well. So know this, Lisa, the fears that you have are also the fears that people without OCD have too. People without OCD are also very concerned about being in public and being in retail and being around other people. This affects everybody, not just people with OCD. So your concerns are the concerns that are being heard across the globe right now. And again, I just want you to really remember that it's not that your thinking has become rational. All right, because OCD can still take over this situation. OCD can still have you go beyond the CDC guidelines of 20-second hand washes. OCD can still tell you that you need to wash your house down every single time you come in it. OCD can tell you that you should strip down to your underwear in the garage and run and take a shower for an hour after you've been at work, and throw out those clothes or something like that. I mean, OCD could still play massive role in all of this. So your job, I get, is probably very important, necessary, still got to pay bills and all those types of things. And the goal of you and your therapist is going to be, what's the best way to manage yourself through all of this situation? It's hard for everybody. It's especially hard for people who have an anxiety disorder. It's really, really, really hard for people who have OCD contamination issues. And yet, then there's other people who don't have contamination issues who have said to me, yeah, I don't really care about the virus. I'm still much more concerned about, what if I ran someone over with my car? That's what the virus doesn't bother me in the slightest. So recognize too that there are other people in the world whose OCD has not picked up on the virus, and it doesn't care about it, right? So many ways to look at this. It's really, really fascinating, actually. All right. Can a person with bipolar disorder be treated with antidepressants for OCD? That's really a great question for your psychiatrist or your medical treating professional. I am not one of those. I am a psychologist, so I would put that question over to them, because they would really want to monitor if you go on an antidepressant but you have bipolar, to assure that that doesn't send you into a manic episode. Grace says she agrees with Brittany's comment. She has always tried to not give in to her OCD and wipe down groceries, and now she says that she should. She's worried after pandemic she won't be able to shake any of the compulsions developed during COVID. Well, Grace, thanks for bringing that up. No matter what situations people come up with, people are always kind of concerned of, now that I've had this, I won't ever be able to shake it. If that was the case, then no one should ever do therapy. We should just stop all therapy now, because then no therapist would ever be helpful to anybody based on any kind of stressor that would appear in their life. So people are going to be able to shake this, and people are already working on shaking these types of things as well, too. But do things need to be wiped down like groceries and stuff? Again, we haven't done that in our house here. And I live with someone who is in the group of what we would call compromised people who could more easily get COVID-19. And even she's not wiping anything down whatsoever at all. We don't wear gloves around the house. We haven't done a massive deep clean of anything. And she still goes out twice a day for a little walk outside. So when the stuff from deliveries come, we grab the box and we open it up. We have not washed anything down whatsoever. And we're going to live the way we've lived for the last 2.5 years, which was in such a way that, we prevent people who are very ill from coming into the home because of her compromised immune system. And otherwise, we live our lives. That's just it. So, Anna says, after stopping avoidance and doing some imaginal exposure, her POCD, so pedophilic theme, and other OCD fears went away very quickly. Wonderful. But now you have a lot of anxiety about why it went away so fast. There we go. And what this says about my character. Any advice? Yes. This is the damned if I do and damned if I don't experience of OCD, which, by the way, many of our NOCD therapists are very familiar with and could help you if you're seeking out therapy for yourself and you need a contact with a therapist. Go to treatmyocd.com or click the link above in the yellow area, and you can be connected to one of our NOCD teletherapists. So, Anna, you bring up a lovely, lovely point. I've always liked this one of that. It's almost like if it doesn't go away fast enough, what does that say about me? But if it does go away too fast, what does that say about me? Almost as if there's a perfect amount of time to be concerned about this, but there's also a perfect amount of time then to stop being concerned about it as well. So what does this say about your character that this went away very quickly? I think it says that you pick up on exposure and response prevention therapy very well. That's what I think it says about your character. Now, you may say, or well, let me change that. Your OCD will say, oh, maybe you gave up that pretty fast because you didn't like the fact that you were bothered by it so much because you really do want to do it. And now that you're not bothered by it so much, maybe you really are going to do it. So look out, here it comes. Another stupid OCD talk there. Only OCD would tell you this, by the way. No other disorder asks this question at all. It's only OCD that asks this question. Of all the other things I've ever treated in my career, this only comes up for people who have OCD. So congrats, Anna, on asking one of the standard OCD questions. Nice work. Okay. And asks again, is the goal of imaginal exposure to prove to yourself that you won't commit a horrible act or to get used to having the thought? It is the latter. It is getting used to having a thought. There is no way to prove to yourself that you won't commit a horrible act. There just isn't. I can't prove to myself that I won't commit any act that you're afraid of either. I might hope not to, but I'll never be 100% convinced that I won't. Just like I won't be 100% convinced that every time I drive, I'll be absolutely safe. So I'll go, Anna, if you'd like to send me the title of your car, that'd be wonderful, because if your goal is to have 100% assurance that you'll be safe, driving is dangerous potentially, and therefore you should stop driving, please send me the title of your car. This will now be the 9th car, I believe, that I'm up to in these webinars that people will send me. No one yet has sent the title to their car, by the way, from the previous webinars. I just want to remind you to send those to me, please. I could use your cars. Thank you very much. Mikhail, what aspects of OCD are biological? What is the relationship between biology and behavior in OCD? Well, I suppose it's all biological in the sense that it occurs in the brain, and the brain is part of our biology. So there's a biological aspect right there, but the biology learns too, right? So the brain learns. Since the brain's part of biology and the brain learns, then the brain is part of biology, and the learning is has an effect on biology. So learning can affect biology. So we can look at the PET scan of somebody before they start treatment for OCD with exposure and response prevention, and then we can look at a PET scan of them after they do the treatment. And what do we find? Their brain looks different in the PET scan when they're showed the thing that they were afraid of when they started therapy. So did the brain change? No, not really. But did the way it reacts to things change? Yeah, totally did. Learning can change the way the brain functions. So the brain is our biology. The learning affects the function. Hope that helps. Lisa has been watching my OCD speeches on YouTube, and you appreciate me trying to help all of us out. Well, thank you, Lisa. I'm glad you like them. I've always enjoyed doing speeches. It's like the most fun part of my job. Debbie says she has a compulsion to overthink. All right, let's all ponder that for a moment and think about Debbie's overthinking. Okay. She's not sure about what the obsession is, as I just think and fantasize about nothing. I don't even know how one would do that. How would you think about nothing? Since there's no such thing as nothing, there's always something. How do you do ERP for a compulsion when you don't know the obsession? Okay, well, I wonder if you mean nothing as in just stupid little things, or if you're just finding your mind just kind of wander over time. So how would I do ERP to this? Well, what I might do is create a loop tape of and the NOCD app is great for this, by the way. If you go to the therapy tools portion of the NOCD app, there's a loop tape function. And Debbie, what you might do is create in that loop tape there a loop of, I sure hope today I think about nothing and I focus a lot about nothing and that nothing happens to me and that my day is filled with nothing. That would be wonderful if there's just nothing. And just kind of sit and hear that over and over again until you're so bored with it. And after you're bored with it, go out and do things, even though that thought's in your head. So what I don't want you to do is to sit around and think. Now, I get that in today's day and age here with our COVID-19 and restrictions, that might be a little bit harder to do, to go out and do things, but you can still go to the grocery store if you need something. You can still go get to the drive-thru and get some food. You can still go for a walk in the park or something like that. You can still take your dog out if you have one. There are still things that you could do. You can play a game with your family. You can be involved in things and recognize that you can still be involved in things, even if this thing pops into your head, these kinds of thoughts, and that therefore, even if these thoughts are in your head and you're still doing things, who cares if these thoughts are popping in your head, right? I liken it to my tinnitus. I've told you some of this story before, but I have tinnitus or tinnitus, that ringing in your ears. It always sounds to me as if I've walked out of a concert and I have that ringing going on. I still do my day all day long, even though I always hear that sound going on. So I'm wondering, Debbie, if I should not do anything until that sound goes away, just like you feel like maybe, is there anything that you can do if there's a thought about nothing going on? So how do we do ERP for it? Loop tapes, imaginal exposures to what if there is just nothing and my life is nothing and it's all about nothing, and then record those and listen to them and still go on and do things during your day. See how it goes. Let me know. Can caffeine, sugar, inflammatory foods make OCD worse? Have you found that diet affects OCD? There's some research out on that, that some stimulants and things can make OCD worse. Absolutely. So it might be something to experiment on a little bit to see if a little bit of a diet change makes some changes in your OCD as well. Thanks, Laura. Anna, if I don't have access to ERP and NOCD isn't available in your country, is it safe to attempt ERP on your own using workbooks as guidance? Yeah, I think that it would be. And I think that if there are some questions that you have about that, the NOCD app, at least in the community fields, might be helpful too. There may be other people who have gone through ERP for what it is you're going through ERP for, or you're going to go through it for, and they may have some wonderful suggestions as well too. So utilize your friends in the NOCD app in the community And for those of you who are in places where an OCD therapy is available, feel free to turn to us if you're in need of a therapist. Okay. Advice for struggling with ERP. As in, it's hard to do, I wonder, Mike? I would say the best thing to do that I always tell people is to start small. You got to start with low-level stuff and build your way up then. Don't try to go into ERP full throttle. That's going to just scare the crap out of you and you're going to run away from it. You want to gradually try it. And if it didn't work, try something a little more gradual. And if that didn't work, try something a little more gradual until you find something that's working and then build your way up from there. Those are the best ways that I have found to do it. So, Andy asked about some mindfulness for ruminating. There are plenty of wonderful YouTube, just look that up. And there's lots of different YouTube videos that you'd be able to watch for something like that. And that's probably where I would go for those things. But you might also utilize the NOCD tools like the loop tape for rumination as well, too. And what I have found helpful for ruminating is just having people play that rumination on the tape over and over again while they go about their day. And after about 2 hours, they're like, I'm so sick of this stupid tape. I don't even want to hear it anymore. Then I say, great, listen to it for another hour, because I want you to get to the point where you're just like, oh, geez, this stupid ruminating, I'm done with it. And you're just so bored with it that it doesn't even bother you anymore. So see how that goes. Anna asked if I could talk about my client's experience with general health changes like diet, meditation, exercise, etc. Well, I've always seen those as good, important parts of the self, right? So the biopsychosocial aspect of things. We want to take care of ourselves biologically by eating well and getting your fruits and vegetables and having a good diet and limiting all those empty calorie things, and do your exercise because that's a very healthy thing for you. And meditation has shown to be very, very helpful for people. So I think all of those things are going to be a good part of your daily regimen that you want to do for self-improvement, along with working on challenging your OCD as well, too. I remember when I was a kid growing up that they would show like the worst cereal in the world for you. It was just like sugary sugar pops, snappy sugar snap pops. And it was 9,000 grams of sugar per serving. And then they would say, sugary pops, snap pops are a part of this healthy breakfast. And they would show eggs and a breakfast meat and some toast and some milk and orange juice and an apple. And yes, they are a part of this healthy breakfast. They don't add a darn thing to it, but they are a part of this healthy breakfast that we have thrown here on the TV for you to look at. This actually turns out to be the non-essential part of the healthy breakfast. So you, Anna, want to eliminate the non-essential things and do the good things for you. And I have found that clients who embrace kind of that entire biopsychosocial experience do very, very well. So thank you, Anna, for that question. Leo wonders, what do I do in the case of HOCD, as in homosexual OCD? So that's either I'm straight, but worried, what if I were to become gay? Because that's not how I identify, or I'm gay and worried I might become straight because that's how I identify. And sometimes you have fantasies of the same sex, I'll assume there. And then it morphs into the opposite sex and it makes you feel so uneasy and annoyed. It doesn't stop. Do you just like the scenario play out in your head? Yes, I would totally let those scenarios play out in your head and not be afraid of a scenario, because the more you try to stop a scenario and the more you try to stop a thought, the worse it gets. Now, those of you who have watched these know what's coming, because what do I always tell all of us to stop thinking about? That's right, the pink elephant. So Leo, don't think of a pink elephant. Don't picture a pink elephant in your head. Have no thoughts of pink elephants whatsoever. Now, Leo, did you think of a pink elephant? Did you? I told you not to. I bet you did, but I told you not to. Now, the more, Leo, you try not to think of a pink elephant, the more you're going to think of it. And the more you try not to think of men, women, boys, girls, whatever it might be, if it's HOCD, if it's POCD, if it's whatever it is, the germs, if it's running people over with your car, the more you try not to think of them, the more you're going to think of them. It's that simple. It's just the way that it is. You're not going to stop. So instead, what do? We accept the fact that, hey, I can just have a thought. And I don't have to like it, but I can have it. And it's okay. Now, for the non-nerds listening to this, just go to the bathroom or, grab a snack or something like that. But for the nerds, here's my example of this. If you remember watching Star Trek: The Next Generation and Commander Data, who was like the smartest, strongest, fastest, just everything being that had been created in the known universe so far, as in what we knew anyway. And Data is playing stratagema against the known in the known universe top player of stratagema. And Data loses stratagema to this guy. And everyone is like, what the? What? And Data starts pulling himself out of service, and he's in his quarters, and he's running diagnostics on himself. And everybody's coming to see him like, why aren't you at work? I am running a diagnostic on myself. I have failed at something, and that should not have ever happened. I have never failed at anything before. There must be something wrong with my programming, and I'm going into the deep core subsets of blah, blah, blah. And he ultimately finds there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. He was just beaten by someone who was better than him at this thing. So they get to the end, and the two are playing again. And this time, Data's sitting there, and he's got the things on it, because that's how you play. These things are on the fingers. And the other guy's got him, and the other guy's getting frustrated, and finally throws him off his fingers, and he says, "You cheated. And this is a mockery." And he walks out, and everyone goes to Data and says, "Data, you won. You beat him." And Data says, "Well, no, technically I did not." And they say, but no one's ever taken the game to this level before. This is the farthest it's ever been played. How did you do it? And he said, well, my opponent always attempts to win and knows that I am going to do whatever I need to do to win. And therefore, he's anticipating all the movements that I will do to win and countering those movements. Instead, I tried to neutralize the game by not trying to win, but by not trying to win, and also by not trying to lose. And the guy didn't know what to do because no one had ever played that game before. Now, it's a very long example, but what if your OCD was like that, right? What if your OCD was just used to you always trying to win, and it always anticipated everything that you were going to try to do to win, and the reason it beats you all the time is because it already knows exactly what you're going to do to try to win, and so therefore it's already ahead of you, and it already wins because of that. What if you did the opposite? What if you decided, well, okay, fine. I'm not going to try to win anymore. I'm going to live neutral. And that's what I'm going to do. Well, OCD has no idea what the heck to do with that. And that's when you can start to see OCD fade away, because OCD just doesn't know how to live in that world of neutral. OCD only knows what to do to win. And if you say, okay, fine, OCD, you win. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, whatever. Great. I don't care. You can win that little thing, but I'm just going to live in the world of neutral. You can have your little belief that you won, whatever. But I see it as I'm just not going to fight the battles anymore, and I'm going to go live my life. I think you'll see OCD start to fade away if that's the way it goes. Yellow. You did cold turkey to OCD topics for about a year. Your symptoms have gone down, but still have daily compulsions. They're just manageable and not bad. They're mentally at this point, but you've been wanting therapy lately, but you feel like they won't think you have OCD as compared to a year ago when I couldn't even look at people in the eye. Well, if you still have some compulsions going on, there's still OCD, isn't there? And if you want to work on decreasing them, then you can make yourself a better person, if that's how you feel it would be, or a more my other non-favorite word, quote unquote, normal or less OCD or whatever that would be, you could totally work on that with a therapist. And I think that you would just say to them, I've battled OCD for a very long time. I've been able to decrease it down to this level, but I haven't been able to go beyond that. And this is where I need therapy and help. Would you be willing to help me? Tanya, thank you. Since coronavirus situation, hearing about symptoms of being short of breath, etc., she's been monitoring her breath a lot and constantly swallowing and have globus type throat sensations. Suggestions on ERP? Yes. All right. Well, we can utilize some of the things that we do in something called interoceptive exposures. Everyone go look that up. Interoceptive exposure. INTEROCEPTIVE exposure. What are they? They're exposures to bodily sensations. We use them in panic a lot. And people who have panic have a fear of bodily sensations. So what do? We create the bodily sensations for people to sit with and learn how to handle. So what you might want to do is practice holding your breath. Practice breathing through straws. And get smaller and smaller straws all the time. So it feels like you're not breathing. Purposely hyperventilate for a while and do that. Put some pressure on your throat there to get like that gaggy sensation that happens. So those are the types of things that I would do with you, Tanya, to help you deal with your fears of your bodily sensations. I would create them one-on-one to teach you that you could handle them. Okay. Now, good therapists know about these, and hey, NOCD therapists are good therapists. They know about this stuff because NOCD is available to all of you in the states that we're live in for teletherapy. Feel free to give us a call or go to treatmyocd.com or that little yellow bar up on top. Click that little website right there, and you can go and you can be connected to our care team. Hope that helps anybody. Anna, has anyone ever come to me with such a strong obsession with brands of physical possessions that owning or purchasing items is extremely stressful? I guess I would want a little bit more information on that, but as in I have to have this certain kind of thing in order for everything to be okay. I have seen that. I once treated someone who knew they were going to go to college and knew that going to college they were going to have to study a lot, and knew that studying a lot they were going to need a really comfortable chair. And they put off going to college for almost 2 years already because they were still searching for the absolutely right, perfect chair. So yeah, I have seen things like this, and it became very stressful to them because they thought, well, I can't go to college if I don't have the right chair. And yet they spent all this time trying to find chairs, and every chair had something slightly not just right. There could always be something just a little bit more better about this other chair than maybe that. And I don't know if they ever went to college because I ended up going to a different job, and then I never heard from them again. But I have no idea if they ever went because they were so consumed with that idea. So I would buy brands that are brands that you really don't like and wear them purposely or carry them around purposely and do that until it just doesn't bother you anymore. And then a good exposure to you can go above and beyond is to tell your friends, make fun of me today about the things I'm wearing or I brought with me or my purse or something like that because I need to deal with it. Anush, you feel after reading material on OCD, you're able to control it better and it reminds you of what you're doing. Is it a safety behavior or is this productive? Well, hopefully it's productive. I mean, there's a lot of really good self-help books out there that are great. So if you're reminded of it, then that's wonderful. Safety behavior would be something along the lines of that you have to do it in order to feel good every time that an obsession comes up. That's when you would have the safety behavior. But if you're able to do your reading and it's not taking your whole day and you're not consumed by it, and it's a good reading material, not just a literature search or not even a literature search, just a search on some web browser for anything about OCD, but finding a good resource like a good self-help book or maybe a good book by an amazing author named Dr. Patrick McGrath called The OCD Answer Book. Shameless self-promotion. But there's lots of good, great, even wonderful books out there in OCD that can be very helpful to you. There's a struggle with mental exhaustion, lack of motivation due to constant activity. You often feel too unfocused to even watch TV. Have you ever seen this before, and do you have any advice? Well, rule out attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is one way to take a look at that. Maybe that's what's going on. If it's more of that issue, if it's more to constant anxiety, though, I might have read that wrong and said activity, I apologize. If it's due to more to constant anxiety, then that's when you reach out to a good therapist who can help you come with ways to manage that anxiety and to do exposure and response prevention. Maybe your mental exhaustion is due to the fact that you have a lot of obsessions going on, or maybe you're doing mental compulsions, and a good therapist like a NOCD therapist, treatmyocd.com, could be very helpful to you to overcome some of those issues and deal with those fears. That's right, C squared, practice. And for all of you, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes routine. The more you practice something, the more likely you are to do that thing again in the future. Mike is wiping everything down from the grocery store with Clorox wipes and sprays the alcohol on the soles of his shoes. I do not. What do I think about OCD stemming from trauma and past mistakes? As horrible as cheating. Admittedly, you've cheated on your relationship, even though you've been together happy for a year. You have compulsions about the fear of cheating every day. At one point, looking at people in the eye, I feel like flirting. What do you call that OCD? Well, that's around the relationship OCD. What if I were to do something like cheating, or what if I were to be attracted to someone I shouldn't be attracted to, like a young child? Maybe is where POCD and ROCD can come in, because I'm already dating someone, so I shouldn't be thinking those things. So you can see some crossover in some of those things as well, too. So is looking someone in the eye flirting? Is texting someone flirting? Is having a conversation with someone flirting? Your OCD could then tell you, what if you actually rubbed their leg while you were talking to them and you forgot about it, right? Those types of things as well, too. So all of these things are things that are treatable through a good exposure and response prevention therapist. And ROCD is definitely a theme that we've seen a lot of in the work we've done at NOCD already. And frankly, just for myself, I've seen it really grow in the last year. That this one has just taken off in the last year, and has probably been the obsession of choice for a lot of new OCDers, this idea of relationship OCD, and what if I've done something wrong in my relationship, or what if I don't want my relationship, or what if my relationship isn't the right relationship, or it's good enough relationship, or what if I don't love someone the way I'm supposed to love them, or what if they don't love me the way I'm supposed to be loved, and all of those kinds of things. So that theme can run very, very rampant through relationships for someone who has OCD. But remember this, OCD will pick on something that's really important to you. So if your relationship's really important to you, then OCD is going to pick on that thing and cause you to doubt that thing. So all of this are symptoms of the doubting disorder that you're living with. Will there be a time throughout our OCD journey where we won't feel so anxious around our triggers? Well, that is the goal. That's why we do therapy with people. And there are people who have amazingly good success at doing that. I can point again to Stephen Smith, our CEO, who is very open about his story of having OCD for years and finally getting the right kind of treatment. And now who talks to people all over the world who have OCD, even the kind of OCD he has, and is not triggered by those things to the point that it's interfering in his life. He may still be triggered, and there may still be kind of some intrusive thoughts that happen from that, and there might even be urges to do compulsions, but he's still running our company, and he's still working with people all over the world who have OCD. So yes, you want to have children, but the thought of being panicked and anxious every time you're with them seems like hell. I get that now, but that's where therapy can come in. I'll tell you a story once of someone I treated who came to me because she had not touched her child for the first 6 months of her child being born. And she did that because she was afraid that she would molest her child. And so she thought it would just be better to let everybody else change the child's diapers and hold the child and all those things. And after a few weeks of therapy with us at our clinic, she finally picked her child up for the first time. And it was wonderful to see and very exciting. And she was thrilled that finally she could now hold on her child. And even though those thoughts were still there, she knew that they were just OCD, and it didn't mean that she was going to do anything to harm her child. Katie asks, can I speak a little bit about feelings of defeat and or feelings of incompetence as a provider with OCD who has seen a surge in their own symptoms and is still trying to practice and care for others? When does ethics come into play as a therapist's ability to treat while struggling? Katie, thank you for that question. I think that's really wonderful. You know, one of the things, Katie, that I've always loved is the gathering of people at the International OCD Foundation Conference, where they have a support group for therapists who have OCD, and they all get together. And this is the kind of stuff that they talk about all the time. You know, what about when someone who comes to see you has the kind of OCD you have, and it starts being triggering for you? So, Katie, I would, number one, recommend that you continue with your own therapy for this as well, too, because this is a great conversation to have with a therapist that you're working with to help you work then better with other people as well, too. Katie, are you an incompetent therapist? No, I don't think you are an incompetent therapist. I think that you're a therapist who's probably triggered, but just because you're triggered does not mean you're incompetent. So I want to work on kind of challenging that language. But of course, OCD loves that language, because OCD jumps to the worst case scenario of, wow, now you just suck as a therapist and you're totally incompetent. There's no way you can be helpful to people if you have OCD. And boy, you've been triggered. And now that you've been triggered, then there's no way that you can be even as present in this session as anything else. And all of us have had experiences that trigger us or hear stories that can really hit home. I have done therapy sessions after finding out about deaths of people that I really loved or admired, and still have gone in and been very present in that session of trying to practice that. Why am I here? I'm here for this person and not for me. So how do we work on kind of setting aside some of the stuff that's going on in our own life and being there for other people? That can be really, really hard when we have obsessive compulsive disorder, because OCD, being that almost other thing in our brain that's kind of throwing stuff at us all the time, throwing in doubts and everything, and even probably in the middle of your sessions, throwing in doubts to you, going, you're not really helping this person. You probably should take some time off and just stay away from everybody, because you know they're paying you, and is this unethical if they're paying you to get help and you're not being the most helpful that you could possibly be? Can you, Katie, recognize that that is OCD, and that you don't have to believe that, just like you don't have to believe it about other things that you are working on with OCD as well, too? So that's where I would really go with this, and that I think is the biggest story in all of this. If we're trying to teach everyone that the stuff that OCD is throwing us is not real, even if you're a therapist with OCD and OCD is throwing you things that say that you're not doing well, you're being unethical, you should stop taking people's money, and you're having your own struggles and triggers, can you recognize that as OCD as well? Just like you would ask any patient of yours to recognize whatever their OCD being presented is as well, too. And if that's what you can do, and you can really work on that, and you can work on challenging that, I think you're going to do just fine, Katie. But reach out to your therapist. And if you're not seeing anyone, make sure that this becomes a priority, I would say, to really work on that, because I don't want to see you lose your livelihood. And I also don't want to see your patients lose the work that they've done with you, that they've come to rely on. And treat this for yourself like you would help treat it for somebody else. So thanks for being on the front line, Katie, with us. We appreciate it. For any of you out there who do need a therapist, remember, NOCD has therapists available throughout about 19 states in the country right now, and we're actively recruiting therapists as well, too. If any of you are listening out there, we're looking for you as well, too. And also remember that in this day and age where some emergency regulations are enacted, that there's some other states that are open up that therapists from OCD can help too. So even if it hasn't been an OCD state in the past, it might be now for a little bit while we're dealing with COVID-19. So finally, Randall says, seems like when I don't do ERP, I get general anxiety. Is that normal? Yeah, it could be, Randall. And so what does that teach you? Do your ERP. Even if you're feeling good, I would say do an exposure a day. That's an advice that I give to all of my patients. I think you ought to do an exposure every day, even if you're feeling great. Just do one a day, just to kind of keep a constant reminder of, hey, I'm always working on myself. I'm always trying to make myself better. I'm always trying to improve this. And I always know this, OCD could come back. And so I want to be ready for it just in case it is. And if it does come back, I want to have the best tools available for me to get rid of it so that it doesn't take over again. It's been a great night talking to all of you tonight. I really appreciate all of you being here. I know there's tons more questions, look like probably thousands more questions going on here than I can even get to. But thank you also, everybody, for supporting each other. And Mike wants me to symmetrically align the crooked phrenology bus so it's lined up with the window seal. No, Mike, I will not. I will leave it that way, and it will stare at you and haunt your dreams. Take that, Mike. All right. Oh, someone wants my address to send the card to. You can send it to the NOCD headquarters, please. That would be fine. It's on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. So great to see all of you. We'll be back again next week. And keep challenging yourself. Use the NOCD app to support each other. And any advice on dealing with bullies or liars? Yeah, your OCD is a bully or a liar. Stop listening to your OCD. And how do you do that? Exposure and response prevention. So everybody, do your exposures, do your response prevention. We'll see you in a week. Have a great night.